Some people might be questioning the temperatures, may be deciding to stay home. So I sent out a thing on Facebook this morning. Hey, we have a live stream if you can't make it. And then, as you would expect, Satan has his hand in some things, and our live stream's not working today. Figures. So I'm glad y'all are here, and so we'll send it out to those who couldn't make it. I haven't a clue what's going on, but that's technology for you, isn't it? Sometimes that's just how it works. The other thing that I feel like I have to address is either I need to slip Ken the $10 I owe him for the nice compliments, or I need to find some duct tape and say, whoa, filters or something. Now, Ken, I appreciate you, and always enjoy. I enjoy what so many people can bring to the welcome, and just to bring us in together. I love to laugh together as a congregation, and the whole gamut of emotions, whatever it may be, we are here, and you are welcome here. In fact, that was a series we finished up last week, is this welcome home, how a church should be like a welcome home. And I've had several people ask me, like, Mitch, how in the world are you going to follow that series up? What I told them was, I'm retiring. I'm done after that series. I figured it was good enough, go out with a bang or something. No, I'm kidding. I figured, what better place to go after a series talking about how we should be a welcome home than a story about someone truly being welcomed home. This story is one of struggle, it's one of loss, it's one of finding your way home, it's a story of redemption, and of course it's a story of love. Of course, I'm talking about the story of Ruth. And it's a fascinating little book, 4 chapters long, found in the pretty much beginning of the canon of Scripture. And it's a beautiful story that has so many things to teach us. And so we're going to walk through the story of Ruth over the next few weeks. So we'll start, as any good story starts, in the beginning. Well, this one doesn't quite start that way, but it has something similar. It says in verse 1, I am done with technology this morning. Yep, the clicker's not working. There we go. Oh, man. Be careful, I might throw that clicker somewhere. In the days when the judges ruled Israel. These are the first lines of the book of Ruth. Now, that's setting the scene. It's setting just a little bit of what it should look like of the context. Whatever story is told, usually they try to tell you the context. Well, we ought to understand this the way that the original hearers, the Jews, the Hebrews, would have understood this. And if you heard this phrase, in the days the judges ruled Israel, there should be a knot in your stomach. Because this was not a good time in Israelite history. This was a pretty dark time. The judges, this was not the conquest of Joshua. You know how if you're reading through the Bible, this year you might be somewhere in Numbers and going through some of that stuff, but you're seeing that they're on their way to the promised land. And if you're anything like me, you can't wait for Joshua to show up in your daily Bible reading plan. Because Joshua is like, this is the conquest. This is whenever stuff really picks up. And it's really cool because God is helping his Israelites conquer the promised land. They are coming to the place that they have been planning on coming for a very long time. Ever since the days of Abraham, whenever God promised to Abraham, here's where your descendants are going to be. Finally, they get there. And Judges comes right after Joshua. But it ain't that story. It's not the story of the conquest. It's not the story of God walking with his people and helping. Yeah, they have some troubles. Judges is the stories of how Israel keeps on turning its back on God. And God sends a judge to say, hey, get your act together, turn back to the Lord. And they do for a time, and then they turn back away from God. And Judges is a really dark time in Israelite history. In fact, the last line of the book of Judges kind of sums it all up. It says, in those days, Israel had no king. All the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. In other words, what Scripture is saying is during the time of the Judges, it was complete anarchy. Everyone did whatever they thought was right in their own minds. It was a dark time. It was a dark period in Israelite history. And this is where the book of Ruth is set. So now we have the scene. Let's be introduced to the people and then the first problem. First two verses. In the days when the judges ruled Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. This is the problem. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab, taking his wife and his two sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their two sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were the Ephraimites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah, and when they reached Moab, they settled there. Now, names are often very important in Scripture. We see that oftentimes throughout Scripture, that names really mean something. Well, this is no different. The father's name is Elimelech, and this means, my God, the King. The mother's name is Naomi. Naomi means pleasant. The sons, Mahlon and Chilion, means sickness and finished off. Parents, if you want to forecast a grim future for your kids, name them Mahlon and Chilion. What horrible names. Well, maybe part of the reason was because of the problem that they were facing, but the names here are fascinating because Elimelech, my God the King, is living in a time when Israel had no king and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. This should be a good testament of this man. But maybe not so much, because the problem is that there's a severe famine there in Israel. And in fact, it points out that there's severe famine in Bethlehem, which is ironic because Bethlehem means house of bread. But there's no bread to be found. And so there's a famine, but the Hebrews would understand, especially the original knowers of this story would understand that this is no coincidence. Because Deuteronomy 11:13 says it this way, so if you faithfully obey the commands I'm giving you today to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, then I will send rain on the land and in its season, both autumn and spring rains, so that you may gather in your grain new wine and oil. I will provide grass in the fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Verse 16 says, but be careful, or you will be enticed to turn away and worship other gods and bow down to them. Then the Lord's anger will burn against you. He will shut the heavens so that it will not rain, and the ground will yield no produce, and you will soon perish from the good land the Lord is giving you. This is what the Jews knew coming into the promised land, is that when they come in, they have God's blessing. And as long as they remain in God and are obedient to him, he will continue sending the rains at the appropriate times. He will continue making sure that they have plentiful harvests. So the drought that is happening in Bethlehem seems to be a direct link to their disobedience. You would think that Elimelech and Naomi would know this passage of Scripture. You would think that they would use this understanding during the drought to turn their hearts back to God. But instead, Elimelech decides the best thing for his family is to go find greener pastures somewhere else. Boy, a lot of us can relate. We've seen this in our own families, can't we? Right whenever things get a little bit difficult, right whenever things get a little bit hard, whether in the marriages, whether in our jobs, whatever situation, we look off and we see that the grass seems to be greener on the other side of the fence. And so we're like, you know what? We ought to go there. Rather than remain in the commitments that we've made, we would rather break them in hopes for greener grass. Elimelech chooses to leave the promised land and quite possibly to leave the promises of God to head to greener pastures in Moab, of all places. Moab, as you can see on the map, is really on the other side of the Dead Sea. And it's a journey, a little bit of a journey to get there. But Moab, of all places for an Israelite to go, you would not consider Moab to be one of those places. Because Moab is considered, this nation is considered one of the greatest enemies of Israel. See, during this time, during the time of the wanderings, the Israelites were coming near Moab, and the Moabites send Balaam the prophet to go and curse the Israelites. Now, Balaam, we know, doesn't curse them because he's trying to follow the Lord, and it's kind of an interesting story in and of itself. But still, they want to curse the Lord's people. Whenever that doesn't work, this same Moabite nation sends their women to go to the Israelite men to seduce them to cause them to sin, and because of their sin with the Moabite women, the Israelites are punished with a plague where 28,000 Jews die. And if that's not enough, in the time of the judges, for 18 years, King Eglon of Moab oppressed Israel. No Israelite in their right mind would consider Moab to be a good place for a Jew. We don't know why Elimelech decided to take his family there. All we know is he, his wife, and his 2 sons went to Moab, to this foreign land. But on the way, Naomi's world gets shaken because Elimelech died. And Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moabite women because those were the women around. One married a woman named Orpah. The other named a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone without her 2 sons or her husband in a foreign land, away from the promised land, away from God's blessing. Even though it doesn't seem like God is blessing their land, she is alone. So far, this is a pretty grim story. There's nothing great about what's going on here. But see, the thing is, God sometimes is working in the background, and He's working some amazing things to let us know that the best is yet to come. The story of Ruth reminds us of that. Verse 6, it's an olive branch to Naomi. It's not much, but it's a little bit of peace. Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed His people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughters-in-law got ready to leave Moab and returned to her homeland. Naomi doesn't have to stay in the foreign land. She comes to her senses. I don't know if she fully went along with her husband, if she was supportive of this, or if she went kicking and screaming the whole way to Moab. But she's in there, and she's planning on staying in Moab until she hears, wait, there's still a God in Israel, and He's blessing the Israelites. That's my people. That's my home. I don't have to stay in a foreign land. She doesn't have anything where she is, nothing holding her to where she is, and she also doesn't have anything going back home, but at least she'll be around God's people. Maybe she'll find someone who doesn't just do what is right in their own eyes, but does what is right in God's eyes. The plot thickens. We know the rest of the story. We know what's going to be happening. But Naomi puts a little trust, puts a little faith. So she packs up and is ready to go. Then she looks over at her daughters-in-law and thinks for a second, saying, wait, it's not a good idea for you to come with me. And she lists several reasons. Said, for one, you just stay with your family. This is your people in Moab. You stay with them. That'll be fine. That's better. Go and marry some young Moabite man and be with your people. You can't wait on Naomi to go and get married again and have hopefully a son, 2 sons to carry on the name. She tells him, that's just not going to work. Go home. Takes a little bit of convincing, but Orpah decides, you know what, I'm going home. But Ruth clings. In fact, it says, Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. All right, forget mother-in-law jokes, because we have a whole host of them, right? Ruth says to her mother-in-law that she has now lost her husband, that would be the tie, says, I'm with you. I am sticking with you. This is a beautiful image. This is a beautiful passage. This is what the message that Ruth is telling Naomi is the same message that God is trying to tell the Israelites. They're saying, look, I'm going to be with you. Wherever you go, I'm going to be with you. If you go into the land of the Moabites, I will be with you. And this is a beautiful thing that is happening. But it doesn't mean it's easy. Now, the trip back, that's not a hard trip necessarily, but for 2 women, that could be dangerous. The path wasn't always safe. But more so, what's questionable about this is the return. How would this Jewish exile, who seemingly ran away from God, and a foreign Moabite woman be received back home? So when Naomi and Ruth show up back into Bethlehem, social media just blows up. You know, people are going to their Facebook accounts saying, and they take a picture and like, what? Is that really Naomi? And then all the questions pile in. You know the questions. What happened to her husband? Why'd they leave anyway? Where are her sons? Who is this woman, this foreign woman? Who does she think she is wearing that here? You've heard those comments, right? You've seen those. This is not a new story. This is an old Ruth story, but it's also a pretty common one in our day and age, isn't it? So Naomi gets onto her social media accounts and updates her profile. She says, I got to change my name from Naomi, which means pleasant, to Mara, which means bitter. And she makes a post and she explains. She says, don't call me Naomi. Instead, call me Mara, for the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me? She didn't get any likes for that post. It was crazy. She's being very real. This is a moment that all the layers, she has no barriers anymore. She is not, her guard of protection that a lot of us put up is gone. She says, look, don't call me pleasant anymore because I ain't that. I'm bitter. And you want to know why I'm bitter? Because God. Are you okay with her blaming God? I mean, just sit on that for a second. What if someone in our day and age were to get on their social media profile, change their name from something that's pleasant to something clearly bitter, and then says something like this? How many of us would be on there commenting saying, whoa, don't blame God, blame sin. Sin is the reason for all of this. And we would chastise the person because what they're saying doesn't feel comfortable to us. We're not comfortable with blaming God for our lot in life, especially a bad lot, right? I want you to notice what God does. He strikes her down with lightning, very next verse. How dare she? No. In fact, God doesn't seem to say a thing. He doesn't call out of the whirlwind and answer Naomi saying, hey, hold on. You know, it's your husband's sin that kind of led to the predicament you're in. He doesn't defend himself. He takes it. I wonder if we could learn a lesson from Naomi and God right here. Maybe God would rather us throw a few stones at him than to totally turn our backs from him. Because the thing is, even whenever Naomi is saying, I went away full, but God has taken it all from me, you know that she is still facing toward God. She has not turned her back on God saying, I'm done with him. She's saying, he has done this to me, but I'm here. I'm still around. So is he. I wonder how many of us would be comfortable enough in our relationship with God to be able to say, look, Lord, I don't know why you did this, but I'm still here. I'm still coming to the land of promise. I am still coming to where your people are. What a beautiful little scene that she gives us here. See, this is a story. Naomi, Ruth, Elimelech, their sons, God, all of this wrapped in a beautiful story about the struggle of what it looks like to truly follow God and to be welcomed by him. But it's not just Ruth and Naomi's story. I believe it's a story we can relate to as well. If you've ever wondered where God was in part of your story, in part of your life, you've been wondering, hey, God, why didn't you show up? Can't you see the mess that's been created here? Why don't you just come and fix it? If you felt that way, then this is your story too. If you've ever wondered if walking in integrity is still worth it, this is a story for you. If you're in the middle of some pretty tough chapters of your life and you just kind of want to be angry with God and let Him know, this is a story for you. Because this is a story where pleasant gets bitter, but bitter gets better. Because we know that the rest of the story is the best is still yet to come. And that is true of our Christian walk as well. We are not in the best times that we're ever going to experience. In fact, far from it. The best is yet to come. And we may not see it in our life, but we for sure, in our physical life here, but we will see it in our spiritual lifetime when the best is yet to come. So if you feel like God is absent from the story, then maybe what we're doing is we're looking at the story the wrong way. Maybe we're trying to view everything and we're only seeing a piece of the picture. Have you ever seen one of those woven tapestries, like in a museum or anything like that, and just absolutely beautiful, where someone is skilled, just works with their beautiful workmanship, and they make this beautiful woven tapestry? Do you ever notice they hang those against a wall? You know why? Have you ever seen the backside of one of those tapestries? If you've ever made one or anything like that, the backside is a mangled net of knots and yarn and everything, and it looks like nothing. It looks like just a big mess. They wouldn't turn that around for the art gallery because that's not the side that you're supposed to see. But in life, sometimes that's the only side that we see. Sometimes the only side that we see of this life is the backside of what God might be doing. What if God is beckoning Naomi and Ruth to come back to the promised land where He can do something absolutely beautiful and amazing with their lives? What if God is calling you back to His home so that He can position you to receive something absolutely beautiful in your life? Because God is at work. And we may be just seeing the backside of it, but God is seeing the whole picture, and He's saying, just wait for it. Just wait. Hang in there. You're going to be amazed. And for those of us that know the rest of the story of Naomi, she is amazed. She's amazed at what God can do through her and a Moabite exile. What can God do through each of us? This morning, if you feel like you're on the backside of life, I don't know what you might be going through. I don't know what kind of loss you might be feeling, whether it's loss of job, loss, you have a fight with your spouse or with your kids, or whatever kind of hell you might be going through. Here's the thing. You might be looking at this saying, where in the world is God? And God's sitting there going, hang on. I got you. You're about to see something beautiful if you stick in it, because the best is truly yet to come. But patience is what you need right now. So this morning, I offer the invitation that follows within that line. That if you are on the backside of life and you're not really seeing a way out, you're not seeing anything beautiful about it, maybe the encouragement that you need to hear is hang on. Stick with God, the best is yet to come. But if you need help hanging on, that's what a church family is here for. Church family is here to gather around you to remind you of the beautiful truths of God, of what God has done in our life with the backside of our tapestries, but has made some beautiful things happen. Because we don't get the way we are without some messes along the path. And so if you need some love, if you need some encouragement, if you need to get your life right with God, that's what this invitation is for. Whatever you might need, do not be shy. Do not just hold it to yourself. Please let it be known. You can trust that this family is going to love you. It's going to walk with you through whatever it is. Would you let it be known? Come as we stand and as we sing together.